You are listening to part 31 of our series, 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Thanks, Gemini. I hope you've had a good week.
I have. Thank you.
So we left singing the praises of coffee and tea.
Yes.
And recognizing that most of us have herbal stimulants in our lives already, and that many herbalists feel that if we're using a lot of those, that other herbal remedies might not work as well as we might hope for them to because we already have those stimulants. And just a suggestion to see, what happens as we begin to replace those stimulants with things like nettle infusion and to build the energy from a different place inside ourselves. I want to talk over the next few weeks about some specific alternative medicines. We are in the 5th medicine, alternative medicine, where we are stimulating and sedating. And I want to take this opportunity for us just to do a little exploration here, because I think that it's so rich that it can be a little bit confusing. I was driving with my sweetheart, and we came to an area of the road where there were just lots of signs. There must have been 8 signs right there. And he didn't quite take his hands off the wheel and throw his hands up in disgust, but metaphorically he did. He said, I can't figure out what any of them are saying. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And fortunately, we had our navigation aid, which piped up and said, bear left. And we're like, okay, good, just go left. You ignore signs and go left. So I think that sometimes with all of the alternative practices, it's a lot like that. It's like suddenly there's 8 signs and you just don't know what to do. And perhaps if we look into them a little bit more, that it'll be easier for you personally to decide whether or not this particular alternative would be something that could be useful to you, or whether it's something that would be kind of redundant in that you're already doing the kinds of things that it offers you. Acupuncture, of all alternative medicines, seems to have the greatest cachet and the greatest respectability. Have you ever had an acupuncture treatment, Gemini?
I have.
Would you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. I went in just because I had never had acupuncture before. I didn't really have anything particular that I was looking for. I just told the acupuncture therapist, just work with me, whatever you were led to do. And so she just did a general session on me. She did a little bit of Moxibustion, I think it's called, as well. But when I left, I felt very relaxed, and she said that she moved some energy through me, like through my back area, but I don't recall the reasoning behind it. But it was very relaxing. I enjoyed it. It wasn't one of these, oh, wow moments. It was more just, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And not frightening in any particular way.
No, and the needles were not painful or anything like that, no.
Exactly. Many, many years ago, I was very good friends with a woman who decided that her goal was going to be to go back to college and become an MD. And she studied very hard in order to pass the entrance exam to be able to apply to medical school. I studied with her because it was a lot of fun. And she called me up one day, and she was so excited. She had just been accepted. And she was accepted to the school of her choice, which was Tufts. She had chosen a pretty good school. And she said, I've got my accepted letter. They accepted me. I said, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful. I am so proud of you. And then she said, talk me out of it. And I said, what? She said, talk me out of it. I said, but you've spent the past 3 years of your life pursuing this goal which you have just now achieved. She said, talk me out of it. I said, sure, okay. You don't want to be an MD. You're really not interested in being an MD. You want to be something else. You want to be an acupuncturist. And she said, okay. And the next thing I knew, she had enrolled at the very first acupuncture college open in the United States. She was in the first group of graduating students, and I was the acupuncture guinea pig. And she went on to quite a solid career as an acupuncturist, very well known, and did really, really excellent work. And so that was my introduction to acupuncture. And like most Americans, I was really taken with it, and especially, with the idea that you put these little bitty needles in, but not like a hypodermic needle. It's not like you're injecting anything. It's just like this little needle, and then it does things to your energy. And it stimulates your energy or sedates your energy, which is what it's doing here in alternative medicine. Now, some people have made a case for this to be break and enter, that this should be high-tech medicine because if we're using the needles there. And I can certainly understand that, and I agree to a tinge. To a tinge. I certainly can really get that, because you could possibly get an infection from using an unsterilized needle or a needle that wasn't yours. But I don't know that that's ever happened, truthfully. I know there was a student in my friend's class who actually had a lung punctured by an acupuncture needle. But we're talking, we're here, we're past the Great Divide. We're talking some harm. We're already saying, check it out. There's going to be some harm. You use these things, there's going to be some harm. It's not a guarantee, especially not in alternative medicine, but it certainly is a possibility. We're not in the safe area of lifestyle medicine. We have gone over the Great Divide. We have gone over the Great Chasm, and we are now here in alternative medicine. And also what I want to say about acupuncture is that for me, and I think for a great many Americans, our romance with acupuncture was more of a romance with another way of thinking about healing. And this was fascinating to us and paradigm shifting. You have your standard view of anatomy and physiology in the Western world. And if you're an herbalist, you have the same anatomy and physiology. The liver does what the liver does. Whether you're a chiropractor or a naturopath or an herbalist or a massage therapist or a midwife or you name it, in the Western model, that's what it is. And suddenly we get not just this acupuncture, but this whole other way of describing the anatomy of the body with things like triple warmers. Who ever saw a triple warmer? And using words like kidneys, and we're back to vocabulary again, that mean, not what we mean by kidneys, kind of what we mean, and sure the same organ, but it does different things. And so not only is the anatomy different, but the physiology is different, and the whole way of talking about it is very different. Because Western herbalists, for all that they use this vocabulary, as I mentioned in the previous couple of weeks, didn't keep a really strict dictum about how they used their words. But in the Chinese paradigm, this has been kept to very strictly as to how these understandings have come down to us. So we were lured in by the needles, by the acupuncture, and then we were kept interested by 5-element theory. And the kind of container that this is in is the 5-element theory, which helps us to understand that there is an energy in the body which is called qi or ki, and that it moves through 5 organs or organ groups in patterns that look like a star and that look like a circle around the star, so that the organs pass the energy from each other in two different patterns. And that energy can be flowing freely, it can be blocked, or it can be weak, so that the point that is supposed to hold and disperse the energy can't do that, and the energy comes out in globs, rather like a fountain pen, and the nib is the opening is too wide, and the stuff just blotches out because it can't be held. It's called deficiency. Deficiency diseases are actually quite common in Oriental medicine. So herbalists and other people interested in alternative medicine were wowed. We really, really enjoyed, and I still enjoy having this different way of thinking about and talking about how our bodies work, in different ways of contemplating how we can help the body to heal itself. I was very surprised to discover, many years after my early introduction to acupuncture, that acupuncture is not an ancient Oriental technique. It was certainly kind of put out to me as that, but then as I went back and really, re-listened to the notes in my head, it wasn't. The five-element theory was put out as the ancient technique, and then acupuncture worked with that. And it is true, the five-element theory is very, very ancient. And the needles, as I began to think about it, pretty obviously couldn't have been really ancient, because the ability to make a needle out of metal and make it that fine is not something that we have always had. It is a real skill to be able to make these literally hair-fine acupuncture needles. And what I heard from a reputable source is that in the Barefoot Doctor Revolution that Mao Zedong created, the acupuncture needles were created at that time, and the idea of using the acupuncture needles on the acupuncture points. And so this is another thing. Is it just the acupuncture, or is it the points? And we were wowed by the five-element theory, and we were wowed by the whole idea of all of these points. That there are meridians or channels through which the chi or energy flows. And that there are charts of these channels, and they flow in fairly smooth and parallel ways throughout the body. And there are points on these channels, not where you would think they are. We're not like looking at the knees or the elbows or any of the jointy points. No, the acupuncture points are sometimes in odd places. And that these points on the meridians, and the points are called tsubos. The tsubos on the meridians are like little interchanges or places where you can get into the energy. I think of the energy highway like a controlled access highway. And the acupuncture points are like the toll booths. And that's where you can get off or on the highway. And so once again, this whole idea of the energy and the energy pathways, and these kind of, not that there are a few of them, there's more than 300 different tsubos, but that they're not like necessarily at obvious places on the body, and they cluster here and there, and some of them are forbidden points, and all of the interesting things that we can do with them. And that system is really old, but the needling isn't. Well, how could we have this old system of meridians and tsubos if we didn't have acupuncture needles? And some of you are going to say, well, shiatsu, and shiatsu is certainly part of it. Shiatsu is the pressing of those tsubos with a thumb or a finger or an elbow or a tool. And that is certainly part of how this understanding came about. But in China, the greater likelihood is that these meridians and supos were treated with Moxibustion. And in your treatment, you had some Moxibustion.
I did.
And how was that applied?
She did had some heat to it. I don't remember if there was a flame or not. It sounded worse than what it was.
Did she have a stick that she held?
Yes, that's what it was. It was a stick.
Yes. Its Moxa sticks are easy to buy and easy to use. And the thing about acupuncture is that we kind of feel like, ooh, acupuncture, that's a needle. I don't want to go sticking it somewhere. Whereas with the Moxibustion, people just inherently feel a lot safer about it. And I think that is not misguided. I think the Moxibustion is altogether safer. As a matter of fact, some of my teachers of this way of thinking tell me that Moxibustion is to be considered tonifying, and that they wouldn't even put it in the same medicine as acupuncture. And I said, well, that's just too confusing for people, because basically you're using exactly the same system, the 5-element theory, you're using the meridians, you're using the tsubos, you're doing everything the same, except you're not putting in a needle. And so you have none of the dangers of the needle. You are burning a substance. And there are a lot of different ways that we can do Moxibustion. The way that your practitioner did with a Moxa stick, which is lit, and then held near the point and the tsubo, and usually the practitioner moves the Moxa stick. In other words, they don't bring it at you like a lit cigarette that they're going to burn you with. They bring it toward the point, and they hold it near the point, and they move it in like little circles or little parallel lines. Does that ring a bell?
It does, yes.
Yeah. And that is called indirect Moxa. And that is the Moxa that most Americans feel comfortable with. There is also direct Moxa. And direct Moxa used in China. I don't know how much it's used there now, but it was very widely used 50 years ago and well before that, in which the Moxa, rather than being in the form of a stick, is in the form of a little cone. Think of something like a quarter of the size of a Hershey's Kiss, but that shape. And that little cone is lit up at the pointy top and placed on the acupuncture point, and it burns down. Yes, it actually burns the skin, and it causes a small scar where it burns down. Several kind of in-betweeners have been created for Western tastes, which do not like to have lit burning herbs on their bodies. I can imagine your story. And then the acupuncturist lit herbs on me.
That's funny.
They don't burn with a flame. It just smolders. But it definitely can burn you. So the kind of in-betweeners that have been created for Westerners are that you put a slice of ginger on over the point, and then you put the Moxa on top of the slice of ginger. So you have that little bit of protection in between. And then moving the Moxa even a little bit further away in distance, but perhaps making it stronger in its effect. They have acupuncture needles with little prongs or cups at the end that allow you to stick or tuck Moxa into them so that you can burn the Moxa on that far end of the acupuncture needle while the needle is inserted in a plate. That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is.
human ingenuity is truly phenomenal. And I wondered if this was all like, okay, I mean, Moxa is wonderful, and I really encourage people to get into Moxa. It is so useful for so many things. Moxa can be used to relieve pain. So if you have any muscular pain or joint pain anywhere, running that Moxa stick around and around that area, it's just so soothing. The heat from it goes in deep, and there's something about the herb too. Now, the scent is pretty rank. It smells like really cheap marijuana. So I say to people, find a place, like go in your bathroom and do it someplace where you're not going to be worried about other people calling the cops on you, or go outside. And you have to be able to put your Moxa stick out, too. So you need a narrow neck bottle or a dish of sand, because they like to just burn and burn and burn and burn. And I want your house to stay safe. So we're going to be careful with that Moxa. And you can also use Moxa to tonify. And so people who, say, have a weak back can use Moxibustion, have somebody do Moxibustion on them to actually tonify and strengthen the muscles of the back. There are two other techniques that are part of this tradition and that use the same meridians and tsupos, but they do it in a more homespun fashion, shall we say. While you don't find anything really like the meridians and the tsupos and acupuncture and Moxibustion in Western healing, you do find in Western healing cupping and a Chinese practice called gua sha, which has some analogs also in the West. So cupping is done by somehow driving the air out of a small vessel and then putting that vessel on the acupuncture point. The vacuum then sucks the skin and the blood vessels up. By small vessel, think shot glass. And think holding the shot glass over a candle flame, which drives all of the oxygen out of it, and then putting it over an acupuncture point, especially on the back. And it really snickers down on there because of the vacuum. And it can be hard to get them off because they're like vacuum sealed onto the back. Of course, it was called cupping because it was originally done with little teacups. Although people, nowadays are more likely to use glass. And yes, you can even at supply houses buy special cups for doing cupping along with instructions. So this is a little more severe in terms of its action on the points than the Moxibustion is, but not as severe and certainly not as dangerous as the acupuncture. And again, I'm not saying that acupuncture is dangerous, just that there are some possible dangers there. Whereas with the cupping, we are not breaking the skin. We're not actually entering at all. We're working right at the surface of the skin. And so that inherently is obviously going to be far safer. The cruder way of cupping is a technique that I was introduced to when I had bronchitis. And the person who introduced me to it, my friend from the acupuncture school, said, this probably won't hurt. And so long as you don't see what it looks like, it won't hurt. But if you see what it looks like, it will start to hurt. Well, what a thing to say. Of course, then one wants only to see what it looks like, right? I mean, she couldn't have set me up anymore because I really just had to see what happened. Now, I can tell you about what she did, and I've done this now on quite a few people because it is so relieving and so useful. She had a shell, like a clam shell, with a smooth edge. So she could hold the clam shell, and she had a smooth edge. I have used, like, the lid to a mayonnaise jar. You want something like that, right? You know, something that has like a lip that you can get hold of, and then has like an edge that you can use. And what you're going to do is you're going to go over the area where there's pain, pressing with your fingertips, and you're looking for inflammation. Wherever there is inflammation, your fingertips will leave little white pools. So if you press into an area that's inflamed, the capillaries don't refill with blood right away. You've pushed the blood out of the capillaries, and it stays white for a beat or two until the blood vessels can push their way back through the swelling. And those are the areas that you want to target with the gua sha. You rub a pretty good coat of some kind of fat on the area that you're going to be working on. Most of the time, I've done this on people's backs for helping them to deal with lung congestion, helping them to deal with grief, helping them to deal with back pain, helping them to deal with the after effects of radiation or chemotherapy to the chest area or operations on the chest area. So there's some oil, some fat spread pretty evenly across the area. We're going to talk about it as though it were the back, although it doesn't have to be restricted to it. And then using that leading edge of my shell, making sure it's smooth, or the lid, whatever we're using, and starting near the shoulders and drawing down, but never going directly on the spine. So it's to the side of the spine is fine, and in parallel lines, and we usually use short parallel lines, so like, and you can do like one parallel line, or you can do them side by side across an area. And what you want to do is to press hard enough to break those capillaries we were talking about. And this is why you don't want to see yourself after you have been gua sha'd, because all the capillaries are broken, and what you look like is somebody who has come out of some kind of horrible accident. And especially if there's inflammation, then when you break those capillaries, the blood is going to pool there, and it's not going to be able to be taken quickly away, and it's going to really look purple. It can look really ugly, but this is instantaneous relief from muscle aches and pain in the lungs and horrible things going on in that area of the body. So gua sha is one of those techniques from the first time when I had it. That was it. If we were going to be buddies, we were going to be friends, I was going to teach everybody how to do gua sha so that at least somebody, if I ever needed again, would know how to do it. And now how perfect. I have taught all of you how to do this wonderful, simple thing. And again, it is definitely stimulating. We're not in any way saying that this is lifestyle medicine. This is emergency medicine that comes out when you really need to just stop something in its tracks right now and right then. And what I often suggest that somebody do is get some kind of hot tea. Hey, sage tea is perfect. And cuddle up in bed until the tea puts you to sleep, because this is some strong stuff, the gua sha. Have you ever heard of gua sha?
No, I've not heard of that.
Sometime in the future, I'm going to ask if you had a possibility to try it out. I know it's not going to come up in the next week, but who knows?
No. No, but it's fascinating, and I'm going to look into it more.
Yeah. And then I guess the last thing to say about acupuncture is that Ted Kapchuk, the author of The Web That Has No Weaver, the classic book in English on the five-element theory, and America's leading acupuncturist, has said publicly that acupuncture doesn't actually work. It is a healing presence of the practitioner, and he's put away his needles. He's still working as a practitioner, but he says that he doesn't feel that the needles themselves are really doing much of anything. What a fascinating statement from the person who founded the school, taught there for years, and here, after doing this work for 40, 50 years, has said, this is my considered opinion. What a bold and brave statement, huh?
Mm-hmm, indeed.
Yeah. All right, well, we keep on reminding people that herbal medicine is people's medicine. It's the medicine that grows right outside our door. And I also want to remind people that if you're really enjoying this series on the 7 medicines, that at my site, SusanWeed.com, you can find information on my course, The 7 Rivers of Healing. And it's just like this. It goes into the 7 medicines, and it helps you find your way through them with any specific health problem that you bring to it.
Thank you, Susan.
You are welcome. Good night. Green blessings.
This concludes part 31 of our series, The 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.